Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the U-East horizon, watching the stars streak past in hyperspace. The ship hummed quietly around him as it carried 2,000 colonists toward their new home on New Dakota. Jake had made this journey 12 times before as part of humanity's slow expansion into the galaxy. Each trip brought families and workers to build new worlds far from Earth. Chief Science Officer Lisa Rodriguez called out from her station. "Commander, I'm picking up some strange readings ahead. Large energy signatures that don't match anything." In our database, Jake walked over to look at her screen. The readings showed massive power sources clustered around what should have been empty space. "How big are we talking, Lisa?" "Bigger than anything we've ever built, sir." "These signatures suggest technology way beyond our current level." Jake felt his stomach tighten. In 15 years of colonial expansion, humanity had never encountered another intelligent species. The possibility had always existed, but finding advanced aliens this close to human space was not something anyone had planned for. "Drop us out of hyperspace, Lisa. Let's take a look at what we're dealing with." The horizon shuddered as it fell back into normal space. Through the main view screen, Jake could see a collection of alien ships unlike anything in human design. They were sleek and curved with a dark metallic finish that seemed to absorb light. The largest vessel was easily 3 times the size of the horizon. "Commander, we're being scanned," reported Communications Officer Ben Hayes. "Multiple active sensor sweeps from the alien fleet. Try to establish communication, Ben. Standard first contact protocols." Before Ben could respond, the alien ships moved with surprising speed. Bright beams of energy lanced out from their weapons, hitting the horizon's engines. Alarms blared across the bridge as the ship lurched violently. "Engine power down to 30%, shouted Engineer Danny Sullivan from his station. "They've disabled our hyperspace drive completely." Jake gripped his command chair as the ship shook from more weapons fire. Shields up. "All hands to emergency." "Stations. Sir, the aliens are demanding our surrender," Ben reported. "They're using some kind of universal translator. The voice sounds very angry." "Put them on screen." The view screen flickered and showed the bridge of the alien vessel. A tall creature with blue scaled skin and 4 arms stood at the center. Its eyes were large and black, and it wore what looked like military armor. When it spoke, the universal translator made its voice sound cold and mechanical. "I am Commander Veltar Crix of the Zephyrian Dominion. You will surrender your vessel immediately and prepare to be cataloged. Any resistance will result in the destruction of your ship." Jake stepped forward. "I'm Commander Morrison of the United Earth Ship Horizon. We're a peaceful colonial transport on our way to establish a new settlement. We mean no harm to you or your people." Veltar Crix made a sound that might have been laughter. "Peaceful. Your species builds ships capable of hyperspace travel, and you claim to be peaceful. We have seen this lie before from primitive races who think they can deceive the hegemony." "The hegemony?" "The galactic hegemony controls this sector of space. Human, your species is now property of the Zephyrian Dominion under hegemony law. You will submit to cataloging and integration." Jake felt anger rising in his chest. "We're not anyone's property. Earth is a sovereign world, and we have the right to travel freely through space. Earth." Veltar Crix tapped something on a control panel. "Yes, we detected your home system in your navigation computer. A single world with some basic industrial capacity. Your entire civilization appears to be limited to this one system and a handful of small colonies." "Now wait just a minute," Jake started to say, but the alien cut him off. "Your resistance is pointless, human. This ship represents the bulk of your military power, and it is already disabled. Submit now, or watch your colonists die." Security Chief Amy Parker stepped up beside Jake. "Commander, we have 1,500 civilians on board, including 300 children. We can't put them at risk. Jake knew she was right, but something about the aliens' assumptions bothered him. Veltar Crix seemed to think the Horizon was humanity's main military vessel. The alien had no idea that this was just a civilian transport with a basic security team. Very well, Jake said finally. We surrender. But I want your word that the civilians will not be harmed. Acceptable. Prepare to be boarded. The alien ships surrounded the Horizon, and docking tubes extended from their hulls. Within minutes, blue-scaled Zephyrians were marching through the corridors of the human ship. They carried energy weapons and wore full armor, but they moved with the confidence of soldiers who expected no real resistance. Jake and his senior officers were taken to the ship's conference room where Veltar Crix waited with several other aliens. The Zephyrian commander studied the humans with obvious curiosity. You are smaller than expected, Veltar Crix said. Most species we encounter are larger and more aggressive. Perhaps this explains why your civilization is so limited. Dr. Karen White, the ship's medical officer, looked up from where she was treating a wounded crew member. Limited. We've colonized 15 worlds in the past 30 years. 15 worlds. Veltar Crix made that laughing sound again. The Dominion controls over 800 systems. The hegemony spans 10,000 worlds across this galaxy. Your 15 colonies are barely worth cataloging. Jake watched the alien commander with growing interest. Veltar Crix was clearly intelligent, but he seemed to be making assumptions based on incomplete information. The Zephyrian thought the Horizon represented humanity's military capability, and Earth's colonies were the extent of human civilization. Tell me, human, Veltar Crix continued, what is the size of your military fleet? This transport appears to be your largest vessel. Jake almost smiled. The Horizon isn't a military ship. It's a civilian colonial transport. We have a security detail of 50 personnel, but this is essentially a passenger liner. The alien's large eyes narrowed. You expect me to believe that your species sends undefended ships across interstellar space? Not undefended, Amy Parker spoke up. We have escort protocols and patrol routes. But the Horizon is carrying families and workers, not soldiers. Escort protocols. Veltar Crix seemed confused. Where are these escorts then? We weren't expecting to encounter hostile aliens, Jake replied. Colonial transports usually travel alone on established routes. Engineer Danny Sullivan wiped grease from his hands and looked at the alien commander. Sir, if you think this old transport is our military's primary vessel, you're going to be really surprised when the actual fleet shows up. Veltar Crix stared at the human engineer. The actual fleet? Yeah, Danny continued, not seeming to notice Jake's warning look. The Colonial Defense Force will be looking for us when we don't arrive on schedule. And once Earth Defense Command gets word about this, he shrugged. Well, let's just say the Horizon isn't exactly representative of human military technology. The Zephyrian commander was quiet for a long moment. Then he made that laughing sound again, but this time it seemed forced. Primitive bluffing. Your species builds slow cargo ships and claims to have hidden military power. We have seen this deception before from conquered races. Ben Hayes had been quietly working at a portable communication unit. Jake saw him nod slightly, which meant the engineer had managed to get a signal through the alien jamming. Somewhere in human space, a distress beacon was now broadcasting the news of first contact and hostile alien action. Jake looked at Veltar Crix and decided to be completely honest. Commander, you've made a serious mistake. The Horizon is a civilian vessel with basic defensive systems. Earth's actual military forces haven't even been contacted yet. When they are, you're going to discover that humanity takes a very dim view of attacks on our civilians. Veltar Crix studied Jake's face for any sign of deception. Your homeworld is a single planet with primitive technology. What possible threat could you represent to the Dominion? I guess we'll find out, Jake replied, quietly. Ben Hayes worked quietly in the corner of the conference room, while the Zephyrians questioned the other officers. His portable communication unit was hidden behind a damaged wall panel, and the aliens had not noticed his careful movements. Hey. Distress signal had gone out 20 minutes ago, using an old emergency frequency that most people had forgotten existed. 300 light years away, Admiral Patricia Wells sat in her office at Colonial Defense Station Omega reading routine. Patrol reports. The station monitored the outer edges of human space and coordinated security for the colonial shipping lanes. In 15 years of operation, they had never received a single hostile contact report. The communication alert that came through the quantum relay changed everything. Ben Hayes' emergency signal contained a simple message that made Patricia's blood run cold. First contact with hostile aliens. UE's horizon captured. Aliens planning attack on Earth. Send help immediately. Patricia stood up so fast her chair fell over. She activated the base-wide alert system and called for an immediate staff meeting. Within minutes, her senior officers were gathered in the command center, staring at the impossible message on the main screen. "Ma'am, are we sure this isn't some kind of training exercise?" asked Captain Frank Miller, her chief of staff. "The quantum relay signature is authentic, Frank. This came from the Horizon's emergency beacon, and Ben Hayes' personal command codes check out." Patricia looked around the room at her officers. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are now in a state of war with an unknown alien species." Back on the horizon, Valtar Crix was becoming increasingly frustrated with his human prisoners. The alien commander had spent hours going through the ship's computer systems, and what he found made no sense. According to the navigation logs, Earth maintained regular contact with 15 colony worlds. The cargo manifests showed industrial equipment and prefabricated buildings being shipped to these colonies. "Your species builds permanent settlements on 15 worlds, but only operates a handful of transport ships," Valtar Crix said to Jake. "This does not match any pattern we have seen from developing civilizations." Jake watched the alien commander pace back and forth. "Maybe that's because you haven't encountered a civilization like ours before." "Impossible. The hegemony has cataloged over 2,000 species. All follow similar development patterns. Military expansion, followed by territorial conquest, followed by integration into the hegemony structure." Dr. Karen White looked up from her medical scanner. She had been taking readings of the Zephyrian soldiers when they weren't paying attention. The aliens had interesting biology with redundant organs and thick-scaled skin, but they also had obvious weaknesses. Their large eyes were sensitive to bright light, and their breathing apparatus could be disrupted by certain gas mixtures. Maybe. Human development is different because we focus on building rather than conquering, Karen said quietly. Valtar Crix stopped pacing. "Building. You speak as if your species avoids conflict entirely." "We've had our share of wars," Amy Parker replied. "But we learned that cooperation works better than conquest for long-term survival." The alien commander made his laughing sound again. "Cooperation. Another primitive delusion. Only the strong survive in this galaxy, human. The weak are absorbed by the strong and become useful resources." Engineer Danny Sullivan was working on a damaged console near the back of the room. He had managed to access some of the ship's internal systems and was quietly gathering information about the Zephyrian technology. Their energy weapons were powerful, but they seemed to rely heavily on energy shields for defense. The armor their soldiers wore was strong, but it appeared to have gaps at the joints. "Commander Crix," Danny said without looking up from his work, "you keep talking about the hegemony like it's some kind of unstoppable force. How many species actually chose to join willingly? Choice is irrelevant, engineer. The strong lead and the weak follow. This is the natural order of the galaxy. That's not really an answer, though, is it? Danny turned to face the alien. I'm guessing most of the species in your hegemony were conquered rather than convinced. Veltar Crix's scaled face showed what might have been anger. The hegemony brings order to chaos. Before our expansion, this sector was filled with primitive species, fighting endless wars over worthless resources. Now there is peace under hegemony rule. Jake studied the alien commander carefully. Peace enforced by conquest and slavery doesn't sound much like peace to me. Your opinion is noted human, but irrelevant. Your species will be integrated, whether you choose cooperation or resistance. The only difference is how many of your people die in the process. While the interrogation continued, Ben Hayes managed to establish contact with several of the human colonists who were being held in the ship's cargo bays. The Zephyrians had separated the civilians from the crew, but they had not searched everyone thoroughly. Many of the colonists were engineers and technicians who knew how to modify basic equipment. The aliens were scanning everything on the ship, but they seemed to be looking for military technology and weapons. They ignored what appeared to be standard civilian equipment, even when that equipment had been quietly modified for other purposes. The colonists were already working on ways to disrupt the alien occupation without appearing to pose any threat. Meanwhile, Admiral Patricia Wells had activated Protocol 7, which was humanity's first contact military response plan. The protocol assumed that any first contact situation could potentially turn hostile and required immediate military response. She dispatched the Fast Response Group under Rear Admiral Tony Graham with orders to locate the horizon and assess the alien threat. Fast Response Group consisted of 12 ships, including the battlecruiser UES Defiant and 2 destroyer squadrons. It was designed to respond quickly to emergencies in the outer colonies, but it had never been tested against alien technology. Admiral Graham received his orders with a mixture of excitement and concern. First contact was supposed to be a moment of historic importance, but the circumstances suggested this would be humanity's first interstellar war. Back on the horizon, Veltar Crix was reviewing the ship's technical specifications with growing confusion. The human vessel used fusion reactors for power and chemical rockets for maneuvering. Their hyperspace drive was functional, but primitive by hegemony standards. Yet the construction was remarkably solid, and many of the systems showed signs of careful engineering. Your technology is crude but effective human, the alien commander said to Jake. This suggests your species has some natural talent for engineering, despite your obvious limitations. We make do with what we have, Jake replied. Indeed, the hegemony will find uses for human technical skills once your species is properly integrated. You will make adequate workers under proper supervision. Dr. Corinne White felt anger flare in her chest. We're not going to be anyone's workers. Earth has something your hegemony apparently doesn't understand, which is what exactly, Doctor? The right to exist as a free species. When word gets back to Earth about what you've done here, your hegemony is going to discover that humans don't respond well to threats against their families. Veltar Crix accessed the ship's navigation computer and displayed a star map showing Earth's location. Your homeworld is a single planet orbiting an unremarkable star. According to your own records, Earth supports a population of 12 billion beings living on one world with basic industrial capacity. What possible threat could such a limited civilization pose to an empire that spans 10,000 systems? Jake smiled for the first time since the capture began. I guess you'll find out when the real military gets here. The alien commander stared at the human officer. Something in Jake's tone suggested confidence that Veltar Crix found disturbing. According to every analysis the Zephyrians had done, humanity was a minor species with limited technology and no significant military capability. Yet these humans continued to speak as if their species possessed hidden strength. Very well human. Since you seem so confident in your species' military capability, I will contact the hegemony. Council can request a full invasion fleet. When 10,000 hegemony warships arrive at your homeworld, we will see how confident your species remains. Jake's smile widened. 10,000 ships. That should make for an interesting fight. Veltar Crix felt a chill run down his scaled spine. The human spoke as if 10,000 warships were merely an interesting challenge rather than an overwhelming force. Either the species was completely insane, or they possessed military capabilities that the Zephyrians had completely failed to detect. 2 weeks passed while the Zephyrian sector fleet prepared for what they believed would be an easy conquest of human space. Commander Veltar Crix had established a forward base on a large asteroid in the system where they first captured the horizon. Mining ships stripped valuable metals from the rock while construction. Crews built weapon platforms and communication arrays. The Zephyrian commander felt confident about the upcoming invasion. His analysis of human technology suggested Earth possessed perhaps 50 military vessels at most. The sector fleet arriving from Dominion space included 200 warships with advanced plasma weapons and energy shields. Against primitive human ships, using chemical rockets and fusion reactors, the battle would be over in hours. Admiral Velinoth Zar commanded the sector fleet from his flagship, the Sovereign Blade. The massive dreadnought was 3 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to destroy entire planets. When he arrived at the forward base, he expected to find Veltar Crix coordinating the final preparations for humanity's conquest. Instead, he found burning wreckage floating in space where the forward base used to be. Report, Admiral Velinoth Zar demanded as his ships moved cautiously through the debris field. Sir, we're detecting no life signs from the base, his sensor officer replied. All installations have been completely destroyed. The mining platforms are gone, and the weapon emplacements have been reduced to scrap metal. What about Commander Crix and his ships? We're finding pieces of Zephyrian vessels scattered throughout the system, sir. It appears the entire forward fleet was destroyed. Admiral Velinoth Zar stared at the view screen in disbelief. Veltar Crix had commanded 30 warships and thousands of personnel. The forward base had been protected by advanced shield generators and automated defense systems. How could primitive humans have accomplished such complete destruction? His answer came 12 hours later when proximity alarms began screaming across the Zephyrian fleet. Human ships were dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, moving fast and in perfect formation. The lead vessel was larger than anything in the Zephyrian database, and it was broadcasting a simple message on all frequencies. This is Rear Admiral Tony Graham of the United Earth Colonial Defense Force. You have attacked civilian vessels and personnel under the protection of Earth. You will surrender immediately or face the consequences of your actions. Admiral Velinoth. Zar studied the approaching human fleet on his tactical display. 12 ships arranged in a tight battle formation with the largest vessel leading the advance. Their approach was precise and professional, but surely 12 ships could not pose a serious threat to 200 Zephyrian warships. Human fleet, this is Admiral Velinoth Zar of the Zephyrian Dominion. You are outnumbered 16 to 1. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. The human response came from Admiral Graham himself. Admiral, we don't recognize your authority in this system. You attacked our people without provocation, and we're here to collect them. Stand down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Impossible. Open fire on the human vessels. The Zephyrian fleet launched a massive barrage of plasma bolts that lit up space like a deadly light show. The humans should have been vaporized instantly by the overwhelming firepower, but something impossible happened instead. The human ships accelerated directly into the plasma barrage using some kind of point. defense system that intercepted the energy beams before they could strike their hulls. Admiral Velinoth Zar watched in growing horror as the human fleet closed distance without taking any significant damage. Then the humans opened fire with weapons, unlike anything the Zephyrians had ever encountered. Instead of energy beams, the human ships launched solid projectiles that moved at incredible velocity. The kinetic rounds punched through Zephyrian energy shields as if they didn't exist, where plasma bolts would have been absorbed or deflected. The human projectiles struck with devastating physical force that tore through alien hull plating like paper. Within minutes, 3 Zephyrian cruisers had been reduced to expanding clouds of debris. "Sir, the human weapons are penetrating our shields." "Completely," the tactical officer reported. "Our defensive systems are ineffective against solid projectiles moving at these velocities. All ships focus fire on the lead human vessel. Concentrate everything we have on their flagship." The U's Defiant absorbed focused plasma fire from 50 Zephyrian ships without slowing down. Admiral Graham's battlecruiser had been designed to operate in the dangerous environment of space where radiation and debris posed constant threats. The human shields were specifically built to deflect solid objects and charged particles, making them nearly immune to the energy weapons the aliens preferred. Meanwhile, smaller human ships began launching what appeared to be tiny fighters that swarmed around the Zephyrian fleet. Squadron Commander Rick Santos led his pilots in coordinated attacks that targeted the alien ships' weapon systems and sensor arrays. The fighters were too small and fast for the Zephyrian point defenses to track effectively. Admiral Velinoth Zar realized with growing panic that his fleet was being systematically dismantled by an enemy he had completely underestimated. The human tactics were unlike anything in Zephyrian military doctrine. Instead of trading long-range fire, the humans closed to point-blank range where their kinetic weapons could inflict maximum damage. "Sir, we're being boarded," reported the security. "Chief, unknown vessels have attached to our hull, and alien troops are cutting through our armor." The boarding craft were piloted by Colonial Marines under Colonel Maria Gonzalez. The Marines had trained for zero-gravity combat and ship-to-ship, operations that the Zephyrians had never encountered. Using plasma cutters and explosive charges, they breached the alien hulls and stormed aboard with weapons designed for close-quarters fighting. The Zephyrian soldiers were equipped for energy weapon combat, and their armor provided excellent protection against plasma bolts. Against human projectile weapons that fired solid bullets at high velocity, their protective gear was nearly useless. Marine assault teams moved through alien ships with devastating efficiency. On the bridge of the Sovereign, Blade Admiral Velinoth Zar watched his fleet disintegrate around him. Half his ships had been destroyed or disabled, and human boarding teams were capturing vessels faster than his remaining forces could respond. The humans fought with a coordination and ruthlessness that suggested extensive combat experience. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the human flagship," his communications officer reported. "Put it through." Admiral Graham appeared on the view screen wearing what looked like combat armor. Behind him, the bridge of the Defiant showed calm professional activity despite the battle raging around them. "Admiral Zar, you've lost half your fleet, and we're just getting started. Surrender now, and we'll accept your crews as prisoners of war." "Never. The Dominion does not surrender to primitive species." "Primitive." Admiral Graham almost smiled. "Admiral, your people made a serious mistake when you attacked our civilians. You're about to learn why humanity has survived every challenge we've ever faced." The remaining Zephyrian ships attempted to retreat, but the human fleet had positioned itself to cut off all escape routes. The U.S. Defiant and her escort vessels hunted down fleeing alien ships with methodical precision. Those Zephyrian commanders who attempted to fight were destroyed within minutes. Those who tried to surrender were boarded and captured. Within 6 hours, the entire Zephyrian sector fleet had been eliminated as an effective fighting force. Admiral Velinov Tsar found himself a prisoner aboard the human flagship, staring at the wreckage of what had been the pride of the Dominion Navy. 200 warships reduced to scrap, metal and debris by 12 human vessels. Rear Admiral Graham escorted the captured Zephyrian commander to the ship's detention area where other alien prisoners were being held. Among them was Commander Veltar Krix, who looked up with a mixture of relief and terror when he saw his superior officer. Admiral Veltar Krix said quietly, "I tried to warn the Council about human military capabilities. They wouldn't listen." Admiral Velinov Tsar stared at the human officer who had captured him. 12 ships. How is such a thing possible? Admiral. Graham checked his watch and looked back at the alien commander. Actually, Admiral, this was just the local response force. We maintain rapid deployment groups in all the outer sectors for exactly this kind of situation. Local response force. That's right. The main colonial defense fleet is still deployed around our core systems. Earth Defense Command hasn't even been notified yet that we've engaged hostile aliens. Commander Veltar Krix felt his scales turn. Pale. Admiral Graham, how many military vessels does Earth actually possess? That's classified information, Commander. But I will tell you this much. What you've seen today represents less than 1% of human military capability. Admiral Velinov Tsar sat down heavily in his cell. The Dominion had sent 200 ships to crush what they believed was a primitive species with limited military technology. Instead, they had encountered a civilization that treated their attack as a minor border incident, requiring only local security forces to resolve. What happens to us now? The Zephyrian Admiral asked. That depends on your governments. Response. Admiral Graham replied, We've recovered our people and neutralized the immediate threat. If the Dominion wants to discuss a peaceful resolution, we will. The Hegemony Council chamber fell silent as Admiral Velinov Tsar's final transmission played on the massive screens surrounding the ancient assembly. The recording showed the complete destruction of the Zephyrian sector fleet by a small human task force using weapons and tactics that defied everything the Allied Hegemony thought they knew about primitive species. Emperor Mordek Thul of the Krillian Empire sat on his throne made from the bones of conquered enemies and studied the tactical data with growing disbelief. The Krillians had ruled the hegemony for 3,000 years, and in that time, they had never encountered a species capable of destroying 200 warships with only 12 vessels. This recording must be fabricated, declared Chancellor Vextar, Mole of the Hegemony Science Division. No primitive species could possess such advanced military technology. The humans use fusion reactors and chemical propulsion systems. Their civilization spans only 15 minor worlds. Yet the sensor data is authentic, replied General Kickstar Den, who commanded the hegemony's military forces. Our ships were destroyed by kinetic weapons moving at velocities that should be impossible for a species at their technological level. Emperor Mordek Thul stood up from his throne and walked to the tactical display showing human space. According to hegemony intelligence, Earth controlled a pathetic cluster of systems on the outer edge of the galaxy. 15 colonial worlds with a combined population of perhaps 50 billion beings. Against the hegemony's 10,000 systems and trillion citizens, such numbers were laughably small. How many ships do our analysts believe the humans possess? The Emperor asked. Based on captured navigation data from their transport vessel, we estimate no more than 100 military craft scattered across their colonial territories. Chancellor Vextar Mole replied. The task force that destroyed Admiral Velinov Tsar's fleet likely represents a significant portion of their total naval strength. Then we will crush them completely. General Den, prepare an invasion force large enough to eliminate any possibility of human resistance. I want 5,000 ships and 100 million troops ready to depart within 30 days. General Kickstar Den bowed low before his emperor. Such a force will require stripping ships from across the hegemony, sir. 5,000 vessels represents our largest military operation in centuries. Excellent. When word spreads that the mighty hegemony required 5,000 ships to crush 15 human worlds, no other species will dare to resist our expansion. This will serve as an example to the entire galaxy. The invasion fleet that assembled at the hegemony staging area was truly massive. Dreadnoughts the size of small cities accompanied by carrier vessels launching thousands of fighter craft. Transport ships carried armies of hegemony soldiers from a dozen different conquered species. The combined firepower was sufficient to sterilize entire solar systems. Grand Admiral Zixtar Vel commanded the armada from his flagship, the Galaxies. Doom, the ancient Krillian warrior, had conquered 40 systems during his career, and he viewed the human campaign as an opportunity to add Earth to his list of achievements. According to all intelligence reports, the humans would be completely overwhelmed by such massive force. Meanwhile, on Earth Fleet Admiral Jack Thompson received the intelligence reports gathered from captured Zephyrian databases. The information painted a disturbing picture of the galactic hegemony as a vast empire built on conquest and slavery. Worse, the aliens were preparing an invasion force that dwarfed anything humanity had ever seen. Admiral Thompson activated the Soul Defense Network and issued general mobilization orders to all human military forces. What the hegemony intelligence analysts didn't understand was that humanity's 15 colonies were not primitive outposts struggling to survive in hostile space. They were heavily industrialized fortress worlds designed to support and supply massive military fleets. New Dakota, where the horizon had originally been headed, was typical of human colonial development. The planet supported 12 million colonists, but it also maintained orbital shipyards capable of building 50 warships per month. Underground factories produced ammunition and supplies, while the entire population trained regularly for planetary defense operations. Colonel Linda Washington received orders to lead special forces teams on preemptive strikes against hegemony. Communication relays. Her teams used stealth ships to approach alien installations and plant explosive charges that would disrupt enemy coordination when the main battle began. The humans had learned from studying captured Zephyrian technology that the aliens relied heavily on centralized command structures. Commander Pete Rodriguez led deep space reconnaissance missions using ships equipped with advanced sensor arrays and cloaking devices. His scouts tracked the approaching hegemony fleet and reported its size and composition back to Earth Command. The intelligence they gathered allowed human forces to prepare specific countermeasures for alien weapons and tactics. The hegemony armada moved slowly through space, confident in its overwhelming superiority. Grand Admiral Zixtar Vel had arranged his 5,000 ships in a massive formation designed to intimidate any opposition. When they reached the outer edge of human space, he expected to find desperate defenders trying to protect their pathetic colonies with inadequate forces. Instead, his scouts reported something impossible. The human colony at New Dakota was protected by orbital defense platforms that mounted weapons larger than anything on hegemony battleships. The planet's shipyards were launching new vessels by the dozen, and the system's asteroid belt had been converted into a massive weapons factory. Admiral, the tactical analysis makes no sense, reported his intelligence officer. New Dakota alone appears to mount more defensive firepower than most hegemony sector fleets. Our projections show they could engage our entire armada with reasonable prospects of success. Grand Admiral Zixtar Vel studied the sensor data with growing concern. One human colony cannot possibly possess such military capability. Your instruments must be malfunctioning. Sir, we've confirmed the readings multiple times. The humans have converted their entire colonial infrastructure for military production. Each of their 15 worlds appears to be a fortress capable of supporting massive fleets. Impossible. According to our intelligence, they are a primitive species with limited technology. Admiral, his communications officer interrupted. We're receiving transmissions from human ships throughout this sector. It appears their military forces are much larger than we estimated. The hegemony fleet was detecting human vessels everywhere they looked. Patrol ships moved between colonies in coordinated patterns, while supply convoys carried equipment and personnel to defensive positions. The level of military activity suggested a civilization that had been preparing for major warfare for decades. Earth Fleet Admiral Thompson coordinated the deployment of humanity's 12 battle fleets from his command center beneath the Rocky Mountains. Each fleet contained over 200 ships ranging from massive dreadnoughts to fast attack craft. The total force available to defend human space numbered nearly 3,000 vessels, with more being completed every day. What the hegemony had failed to understand was that humanity had spent the past century preparing for exactly this scenario. Earth's military planners had always assumed that contact with alien civilizations might result in conflict. Every colony world had been built with defense as the primary consideration, and every human citizen received basic military training. The approaching battle would not be between a primitive species and an advanced empire. It would be between two military powers that had developed along completely different philosophical lines. The hegemony relied on overwhelming force and superior technology to crush opposition before it could organize effective resistance. Humanity had learned different lessons from their history. Humans understood that survival often depended on preparation, coordination, and the willingness to fight against impossible odds. Every human world was ready to defend itself independently while also contributing to the common defense of their species. Grand Admiral Zixtar Val finally accepted that his intelligence reports had been completely wrong about human military capability. The species he had come to conquer possessed fleets that rivaled the combined might of the hegemony's core systems. But he had brought 5,000 ships and 100 million troops on a mission that could not be abandoned without destroying his career. All ships prepare for combat operations, he ordered. We will crush the human defenses through sheer weight of numbers. No species can stand against the full might of the galactic hegemony. The die was cast, and the largest space battle in galactic history was about to begin. On one side stood the ancient hegemony with its vast fleets and conquered armies. On the other side, humanity prepared to prove that freedom was worth fighting for regardless of the odds. The next few days would determine whether Earth remained free or joined the countless worlds that had fallen under hegemony rule. The Battle of Terra's Gate began when Grand Admiral Zixtar Vel's massive invasion force met the combined fleets of humanity at the edge of the Sol system. 5,000 hegemony warships faced 3,000 human vessels in what became the largest space battle in galactic history. The engagement stretched across millions of cubic kilometers as both sides maneuvered for tactical advantage. Admiral Jack Thompson commanded the human forces from his flagship U.E.'s Constitution positioned at the center of the defensive formation. Around him, the bridges of Earth's most powerful warships coordinated their attacks with precision that impressed even veteran hegemony commanders. The humans had spent decades preparing for this moment, and it showed in every aspect of their strategy. Admiral, the enemy is attempting to break through our left flank, reported Captain Susan Davis from the destroyer squadron holding that position. They're concentrating their heavy ships against our patrol craft. Redirect the second battle group to support Captain Davis, Admiral Thompson ordered, and tell Colonel Martinez to launch his fighter wings. It's time to show these aliens what human pilots can do. The hegemony fleet had expected to crush human resistance through overwhelming firepower, but they quickly discovered that Earth's military had learned valuable lessons from studying captured alien technology. Human ships used a combination of kinetic weapons and defensive systems that made them nearly immune to traditional hegemony tactics. Grand Admiral Zixtar Vel watched from his command ship as human fighters swarmed through his formations like angry insects. The small craft were too fast and maneuverable for his heavy weapons to track effectively. Worse, they seemed to know exactly where to strike to cause maximum damage to his larger vessels. "Sir, the humans are targeting our command and control systems," his tactical officer reported. "They're disrupting our communications and sensor networks with surgical precision. How can primitive fighters penetrate our defenses so easily?" "Admiral, their pilots appear to have extensive combat experience. They're using tactics we've never encountered before." What the hegemony commander didn't understand was that human military doctrine emphasized individual initiative and adaptive thinking. Earth's pilots trained constantly in simulated combat scenarios that prepared them for any situation. When they encountered alien technology, they quickly identified weaknesses and exploited them with devastating effectiveness. Captain Jake Morrison commanded the rebuilt UES Horizon, which had been converted into a fast attack cruiser after its rescue from Zephyrian captivity. His ship led a squadron of colonial militia vessels that used hit-and-run tactics to disrupt the alien battle lines. The colonial forces fought with the desperate courage of people defending their homes and families. "Jake, we've got 3 hegemony cruisers trying to flank the main battle line," reported Commander Lisa Rodriguez from her position at the sensor station. "If they break through, they'll have a clear shot at the supply convoys." "Not if we get there. First, Lisa, all ships follow my lead. We're going to show these aliens that humans don't abandon their friends." The Horizon and her escort vessels accelerated toward the enemy formation, using their superior speed and maneuverability to avoid the heaviest alien fire. When they reached attack range, they unleashed concentrated barrages of kinetic projectiles that punched through hegemony shields and armor like they were made of paper. Dr. Karen White worked frantically in the Constitution's medical bay, treating wounded crew members from ships throughout the fleet. Between patients, she monitored the biological warfare countermeasures that human forces had developed based on her analysis of captured Zephyrian physiology. The non-lethal neurological weapons she had designed were proving devastatingly effective against alien crews. Admiral Thompson were receiving surrender requests from over 50 hegemony vessels, reported the communications officer. "The biological agents are incapacitating their crews faster than they can rotate fresh personnel to critical stations." Admiral Thompson studied the tactical display showing the progress of the battle. Human forces were winning, but the cost was enormous. Nearly a quarter of Earth's fleet had been destroyed or severely damaged. However, the hegemony was suffering even worse losses, as their rigid command structure proved unable to adapt to human tactics. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures from the outer system," the sensor officer announced. "Something big is coming through hyperspace." Grand Admiral Zixtar Vel felt a moment of hope, thinking that hegemony reinforcements had arrived to turn the tide of battle. Instead, his sensors showed something that made his blood freeze in his veins. A fleet of human warships, unlike anything that had appeared in the battle so far, was dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. "Admiral, those ships are enormous," his intelligence officer reported with barely controlled panic. "The lead vessel is over 5 kilometers long, and its energy signature suggests weapon systems that dwarf anything we've encountered." "How many ships?" "Approximately 300, sir. All of them appear to be heavily armed, and they're moving in perfect formation toward our position." Admiral Thompson smiled when he saw the new arrivals on his tactical display. "Ladies and gentlemen, the 7th Fleet has arrived. Admiral Clark always did like to make an entrance." The hegemony forces had been fighting what they thought was humanity's entire military for hours, without knowing that only 3 of Earth's 12 battle fleets were actually present. The other 9 fleets had been stationed throughout human space, protecting colonies and trade routes, while Earth's home defense force remained in the Sol system. Now, Admiral Sarah Clark's 7th Fleet was demonstrating why Earth maintained separate defensive forces. The new arrivals included dreadnoughts mounting weapons that could destroy enemy capital ships with single shots. Their arrival turned the tide of battle decisively in humanity's favor. "Grand Admiral, our fleet is being systematically destroyed," reported his tactical officer. "We've lost over 60% of our ships, and the humans are showing no signs of slowing their advance." Grand Admiral Zixtar Vel realized that his invasion force was doomed. The humans had revealed military capabilities that exceeded anything in hegemony records. Worse, they fought with a coordination and determination that suggested this was not their first major conflict. "All ships retreat immediately. We cannot win this battle. Sir, most of our ships cannot disengage. The humans have surrounded our formations, and they're not allowing any vessels to escape." The remaining hegemony ships found themselves trapped as human forces closed in from all directions. Admiral Thompson had learned from studying alien tactics that retreat often led to regrouping and renewed attacks. He intended to end this threat permanently. "Attention Hegemony Fleet, this is Admiral Thompson of Earth Defense Command. You are completely surrounded, and your situation is hopeless. Surrender immediately, and your crews will be treated according to the laws of war. Continue fighting, and you will all be destroyed." Emperor Mordok Thul received the first reports of the battles. Outcome while sitting in his throne room on the hegemony capital world. The news that his massive invasion force had been crushed sent shockwaves throughout the imperial court. 5,000 ships and 100 million troops defeated by a species the hegemony had dismissed as primitive. How is such a thing possible? The emperor demanded. "We sent enough ships to conquer half the galaxy. Your Majesty, it appears our intelligence about human military capabilities was completely wrong," General Kickstar Den replied. "They possess weapons and tactics that we never anticipated. Worse, their fleet strength appears to be much larger than we estimated." "How much larger?" "Sir, according to captured human communications, the forces that defeated our invasion represent only a fraction of their total military. Earth maintains 12 separate battle fleets, and most of them never participated in the engagement." Emperor Mordok Thul felt something he had not experienced in 1,000 years of conquest. Fear. The humans had not just defeated the hegemony invasion force, they had done it while holding back the majority of their military strength. What kind of species maintained such massive defensive capabilities while claiming to be peaceful colonists? The answer came in a message, broadcast throughout hegemony space by Admiral Thompson himself. "People of the Galactic Hegemony, this is Fleet Admiral Thompson of the United Earth Defense Forces. Your government attacked our civilians without provocation and sent an invasion fleet to destroy our worlds. We have defeated this attack and captured your surviving forces. However, Earth does not seek conquest or revenge. We want only to exist in peace and defend our right to freedom. Any hegemony forces that approach human space will be destroyed, but we will not pursue this conflict beyond our borders. The choice of war or peace now rests with your leaders." The message sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy as conquered species realized that the mighty hegemony had been defeated by a previously unknown civilization. More importantly, the humans had demonstrated military power sufficient to challenge hegemony supremacy while claiming they wanted only peace. Emperor Mordok Thul found himself facing the first serious challenge to Krillian rule in 3 millennia. His advisors recommended immediate peace negotiations before the humans decided to launch their own